to meet you too.
It is 8:30 p.m. in Hong Kong time. I'm not sure whether you're in Hong Kong or other places, other cities.
I'm Robert, a former participant, so I'm here to assist you and our participants.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm in Hong Kong. I'm doing my PhD at the Chinese.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And we have participants from Argentina. That is early morning, and some other.
Oh wow, Argentina. Yeah.
Yes, I'm from Argentina. Here are 9:30
Oh really?
morning.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. And we are also in winter, so it's really cold outside. It's a lot of difference.
Yeah.
Yes.
In South Hemisphere.
We have from participants from Russia. It's afternoon in Russia.
Welcome.
We have about 10 active participants, so let's. It's time already, but we have 4 minutes.
I'm still expecting the moderator.
I'm here to assist and Wen for the technical issues.
Okay.
She's here. She's here.
Okay.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. Miss Hui, Miss Lim, or Miss Hui, or Wen?
Yeah.
Shall I call you Wen?
Yeah, you can call me Wen. Hi. I'm managing the Zoom and the social media for the program.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Professor. I'm Elizabeth. I'm not.
Hi, Elizabeth. Good evening.
Thank you for coming.
Good evening.
Wen is in KL, and I am in Hong Kong. So we have a Nigerian participant who has a lot of trouble with his Wi-Fi.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I guess if everyone just go around and tell them where you are, and a little bit will be very quickly would be good. Robert is the moderator.
Oh, thank you, Robert.
Robert and Wen. Yes, we are here to assist.
Okay.
So let's go. Maybe exchange a few words with Professor today before we start.
Shall we wait for other participants?
Yes, I think if you want to get to know with our participants who are here now, maybe they can introduce themselves.
Yeah, maybe we can wait for a few minutes.
Yes,
yeah, for a few minutes.
So Federico already spoke. Vladislav.
Yeah, hello, I'm Vladislav Kruglov. Yeah, now I'm writing my PhD thesis, and it's about e-tradition, e-din, and like 10 wings commentaries. Yeah, I'm working with Tizhang appended commentaries. Yeah, and this year I got 2 master degrees from Moscow State University and Moscow City University in linguistics and pedagogical studies. Yes, and it's my 3rd time when I participate in Sdcf program. I really like it, and it's enhanced my knowledge. It's give a great chance to know more about the philosophy, about Chinese traditional philosophy. So I'm really glad that this year I also participating in this wonderful program.
Okay, welcome. And may I know your supervisor on studying the I Ching?
My supervisor is Artemy Karapetyansk. He is Moscow State University.
Moscow State University. Yeah.
And also I'm making some research in Dunhuang Bianwen.
Dunhuang Bianwen.
Dunhuang Bianwen. And last year I made like a paper in a Dunhuang conference. That also Elizabeth organized for.
There are many.
Yeah.
There are many useful research materials in Paris for the
and in Russia as well.
Study. Russia also, yeah.
Yeah, like examples of yet. So I took the part that was like it's not well known. Like
Hugo, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi. I'm
Hugo.
Very quickly, please.
Hi.
I'm Hugo. I'm a complete beginner at Chinese philosophy. I'm doing my PhD in Hegel.
In Hegel.
Yeah, at Yale, and I'm from England originally.
Okay. Welcome. Nice to meet you. And Tamara.
Yes. Hello.
Yeah, welcome. Hello.
I'm from Armenia. Thank you. I study contemporary China studies. I'm doing my master's in Zhejiang University.
Zhejiang University.
And I don't have, yes, and I don't have a specific area of focus yet, but I'm trying. And I'm very excited about the program and your lecture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Professor, if you allow me to introduce you. I'll not dare to try it in Cantonese. Professor Zheng Zixiong, or Dennis, is a chair professor of cultural history, Department of Literature and Cultural Studies, the Education University of Hong Kong. So we already had 2 lectures on the Confucian 4 books. Today is the last lecture introducing the Confucian 4 books. So Professor Zheng will give a lecture on the Great Learning and the Doctrine of the Mean. So please, Professor Zheng.
Thank you very much, Robert, for your introduction, for introducing me. And okay, first of all, I would like to share with you the PPT.
Yes, share screen, yes.
Okay.
Oh, we can see.
Is it successful?
Yes, we can see that.
Can you see that? Okay. So, well, good evening or good day to all the participants. I'm Zheng Jixiong. Originally, I was teaching in the Taiwan University, the National Taiwan University, the Taida, and I retired in 2012, and then I relocated back to Hong Kong to teach. Okay, today I'm going to introduce to you 2 of the 4 books, The Great Learning and The Doctrine of the Mean. So I'm not sure whether, but yeah, at the very beginning, I'm not sure. I do not have any knowledge about your background, and so I have considered to make a very brief introduction to you about Chinese philosophy. But I guess most of you have adequate knowledge in Chinese philosophy. So if I may, I'm going to move directly to today's lecture. Okay, the major objectives of this lecture is to understand the significance of Chinese Confucian philosophy. Yeah, and second is to understand the spiritual tradition of China. And third is to situate the key concepts of Chinese spiritual tradition, focusing on Confucianism, of course, in a broader picture, which is the universal value shared by mankind. And number 4 is the way to moral cultivation. So the 4 books, I guess you have already participated the lecture on the Analects and the Munches, the Book of Munches. And for today is the Great Learning and Doctrine of the Mean. So the, excuse me, I have to move. So the 4 books has not been edited and combined before Zhu Xi, as you might have known. Zhu Xi is the first scholar or the first philosopher who combines these 4 classics together to become a book for learners. Okay, and at the same time, Zhu Xi advises the learners to study the Great Learning first, to note the framework. Zhu Xi said, 先读大学以定其规模，次读论语以定其根本，次读孟子以观其发跃，次读中庸以求古人之微妙处。So the sequence would be the Great Learning, and then the Analects, and then the Book of Munches, and then last but not least, is the Doctrine of the Mean. So the Great Learning first is to note the framework of Confucianism, or the framework of philosophy, then to study the Analects to learn the fundamentals, and then to study the Munches to know the theoretical elaborations, and then finally to study the Doctrine of the Mean to understand the subtle philosophies. Okay. Originally, the Great Learning. So I'm going to introduce the Great Learning. I've just mentioned the 四书章句集注 is edited, authored by Zhu Xi. There are several, some major revisions, because originally the Great Learning, it is one of the 42 chapters of the Li Ji, the Book of Rituals. And Zhu Xi re-edits the whole piece with a new sequence of passages to become one text, one Jing, what we call Jing, followed by 10 zhuan, by 10 commentaries. Okay, but actually these 10 commentaries are some short or some long paragraphs. So there are 10 paragraphs following the Jing, or we call the text. The major revisions in Zhu Xi's version in the 四书章句集注, there are 3 major revisions. Number 1, the first one, is the sequence of the passages. Okay, the sequence of the paragraphs. So Zhu Xi re-edited and re-added the sequence of the paragraphs, the passages. Secondly, the term 亲民 in the Li Ji, the original version in the Li Ji, is replaced by 新民 in the 四书章句集注. Of course, Zhu Xi has elaborated the new meaning of 新民, different from 亲民. Okay. And then thirdly, Zhu Xi added a supplementary note. So a supplementary note is added in the 四书章句集注 to interpret the terms 格物 and 致知 by referring to Cheng Yi's teaching. Okay. So before I move on to introduce the content of the text of the Great Learning, I would like to share with you a very important introductory note authored by Zhu Xi in the 四书章句集注. So in the first chapter, Zhu Xi said, 子程子曰，大学孔氏之遗书，而初学入德之门也。 于今可见古人为学次第者，独赖此篇之成，而论孟次之，学者必由是而学焉，则殊乎其不差矣。The respectful Master Cheng said, "The great learning is a surviving Confucian text, which is the gate through which the beginning learners enter into virtue. It is the one sole text which tells the steps in the way of learning, taught by ancient saints. The Analects and the Book of Mencius are next to it. Learner should by all means follow this work in his or her effort to learn, and then hopefully he or she will be free from mistakes." So this is a very important introductory note authored by Zhu Xi to remind the readers of this chapter of this essay, very important essay. So now I move on to the text, the Jing of the Great Learning. So actually the Jing is not very long. It includes mainly 3 paragraphs. 大学之道在明明德，在亲民，在止于至善。I'm going to recite the first paragraph, but not the other. But 知止而后有定，定而后能静，静而後能安，安而後能慮，慮而後能得。未有本末，事有終始。知所先後者，進道矣。Okay, I will introduce to you part by part. Okay. So this is the text, and then followed by the 10 paragraphs, what I've just mentioned, the 10 commentaries. Okay, the 10 paragraphs. Due to the time, I'm not going to, not going to go into the content of the paragraphs, but instead I provide you some highlights. The first commentary elaborates on the notion, 明德, the clear virtue, or what we call the bright virtue. And the second commentary elaborates the notion, 新民, revolution or reformation, renovation. Okay. And the third commentary is 止于至善, abiding in the highest good. And the fourth is 本末, the fundamentals and the outcomes. And the fifth is 格物致知, is the investigation of things and the completion of knowledge, what we call 致知. There are, of course, there are different translations based on different interpretations. I will talk about this later. Okay, so the general translation for 格物 is investigation of things, and 致知 is the completion of knowledge. And the sixth commentary is 诚意, fulfillment of sincerity. The seventh commentary elaborates the notion 正心 and 修身, the relationship between 正心 and 修身, rectification of the mind and the cultivation of the body. And number 8, the eighth commentary elaborates on the relationship between 修身 and 齐家. Okay, how learners can achieve 齐家by practicing 修身, managing the family or regulating the family, the 齐家. And then from 齐家to 治国, the ninth commentary, 治国 is the governance of the state, of course. 平天下, lastly, 平天下, the ordering the world towards peace. Okay. So the, excuse me. So the great learning, the nature of the text, it is a comprehensive summary of Confucianism or Confucian idealism, what I call Confucian idealism, or some people prefer the term Ruism nowadays, Ruism instead of Confucianism. But to me, they are the same, okay? So Confucianism or Confucian idealism is theory, is practice, is goals, and the methods. So the main theme is to tell the way of self-accomplishment, beginning from moral cultivation of the self, focusing on the individual mind and behavior, to the extension of moral values to its completion in ordering the state and influencing the world. So now we move on to the highlights of the text, the Jing. So I've just mentioned that the Jing can be divided into 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph highlights the 3 principles. The 3 principles. 大学之道在明明德，在亲民，在止于至善，在亲民 or 心民. Okay, I'll discuss this later. Okay, so the 3 principles, what we call 三纲领, the 3 principles. The first principle is 明德, 明明德 or 明明德, to enlighten our clear virtue or to enlighten our bright virtue. So second is 新民, to renovate, to support the people to renovate themselves or to get close to the people. If we read the word as 亲民, okay, to get close to the people, 亲民. Or if we read the word as 新民, and then to the translation should be to support the people to renovate themselves. Okay. 在止于至善, to abide to the highest good. Okay. So it's related to the relationship between individual and the community, the completion of individual and the completion of community. Okay, the second highlight is the 6 stages, what we call the 6 stages, 六历程, 6 stages, or we can call them the steps to moral cultivation. Okay, so the 6 stages is 知止, 止 is to abide to the objective. 而后有定, 定 is calm, to stay calm. And 定而后能静, 静 is tranquility. 静而后能安, and then we move on. The next step is to repose. And then 安而后能虑, 虑 is deliberation. And then 虑而后能得, 得 is attainment. Okay, so these are the 6 stages, or what we call the 6 steps to moral cultivation. Or the 6 guidelines, you may say these are the 6 guidelines, but actually there is a sequence. So we usually call them the 6 stages or the 6 steps. Okay, and then lastly is the 8 particulars. 古之欲明明德于天下者，先治其国；欲治其国者，先齐其家；欲齐其家者，先修其身；欲修其身者，先正其心；欲正其心者，先诚其意；欲诚其意者，先治其知。治之在格物。So the 8 particulars will be 明明德、治国、齐家、修身、正心、诚意、治之格物。So first of all is the 明明德 is enlighten the clear character to mankind. And then 治国 is ordering the state. 齐家 is managing the family or regulating the family. And 修身 is cultivating the body, to cultivate the body. And then 正心 is to correct our mind. 诚意 is to fulfill sincerity. And then 致知 is the completion of knowledge. Okay. Of course, this is Zhu Xi's interpretation, the completion of knowledge. And then 知之在格物，格物 is the investigation of things. Okay, so these are the steps to the fulfillment of the self. Okay, and first of all, I would like to discuss the 3 principles. 大学之道在明明德，在亲民，在止于至善。大学之道 is the way to the great learning. There are 2 layers of meaning of 大学. So the first layer is learning of adults, 大人, versus learning of, which is different from learning of childhood. Okay. Okay, and the second level is the advanced learning, learning of the great principles versus elementary learning. Okay, actually, Zhu Xi authored another book entitled 小学, elementary learning. Yeah, okay, so if you visit the library, you can access to a book entitled 小学. It's authored by Zhu Xi. So Zhu Xi not only have a publication on 大学, but also in 小学. Okay, so 大学 actually what we're now referring to, the great learning, is a kind of advanced learning, what I call advanced learning, or learning of the great principles, of the grand principles. Okay. So first of all, there are the 3 principles are to manifest or to enlighten the clear virtue or the bright virtue, Okay. Is, of course, the theory is based on Mencius' philosophy on human nature, because Mencius argued that human is born to have what we call innate knowledge, the 良知, what we call 良知 is in English is innate knowledge. Okay. 亲民. Okay, Cheng Yi and Zhu Xi argue that the character qin should be xin, which means renovation, because Zhu Xi argued that in the great learning, there are some passages extracting the content of the Shi Jing and Shang Shu, the book of songs, as well as the book of history, in elaborating the notion 新旧的新, a new or renovate or reformation or renovation. Okay, so they argue that the character 亲民, actually it should be written as 新民. Okay. So last but not least is the 止于至善, abiding the ultimate good. Traditional scholars did not give a fixed definition for the notion ultimate good. It should be the completion of all moral values mentioned in the chapter. So 止于至善 is a general conclusion, concluding that it is the completion of all moral values, 修身, 诚意, 正心, and so forth, mentioned in the chapter. And then the second part is the 6 stages I've just mentioned. Okay, these are the 6 stages: 止, 定, 静, 安, 虑, 德. So if you have already read other Chinese philosophical works, you may notice that these key concepts, what I call key concepts, are very important in studying Chinese philosophy. So we have to focus on each and every key concept. So 知止后止定静安虑德. So these are the 6 stages to practice the way to accomplish the great learning. And they are the details to cultivation to the cultivation of the body. Yeah, okay. So 止 is to abide, noting the final goal. Okay. 定 is to stay calm. It means to concentrate, to focus on what we set as a goal. Okay. And 静 is stick to tranquility. An is to retrieve inner repose. Lü is to deliberate, to think, or to consider, to apprehend, and so forth. And then de is the attainment, to attain. Okay, so we have to, learners are supposed to go through these, 6 steps. And lastly is the 8 particulars. Okay, the 8条目. So on the one hand, on the one end is 古之以明，明德于天下者，先治其国；欲治其国者，先齐其家；欲齐其家者，先修其身；欲修其身者，先正其心。These 4 particulars, traditional scholars call them belongs to the category of 外王, is political achievement to achieve peace and prosperity of the state or the world. Okay. And the other 4 particulars are 正心诚意, 致知格物. Traditional scholars call them the belongs to the category of 内圣, the inner enlightenment. And the method, also Zhu Xi elaborates on the methods or the steps to the great learning is 物有本末，事有终始，知所先后者近道矣. To be aware of the beginnings and the outcomes, the manifestation or the enlightenment of the bright virtue or the clear virtue. Okay, is the root, the beginning, and the first priority. So first of all, we learners should learn how to enlighten his own clear virtue, to admit the fact that we have the innate knowledge. It is the mandate of heaven. So and then 自天子以至于庶人，一世界以修身为本. So self-cultivation is the fundamentals. And finally, the influencing of the world, 明明德于天下, is the outcome, the end, and the follow steps. Okay, so 知所先后则近道矣. Okay, we have to be aware of the beginnings and the outcomes. Okay, okay, I have already introduced to you the interpretations of Zhu Xi. And now I would like to also share with you about the interpretations of Wang Shouren, okay, and other school, okay. In the Confucian classic hermeneutic tradition, there are 2 major schools known as the Xingli school, the Xingli 学派, what we call the Xingli school, represented by Cheng Yi and Zhu Xi. And the other is the Xinxue school, 新学学派, represented by Lu Jiuyuan and Wang Shouren. Of course, the 四书章句集注 is authored by Zhu Xi, and of course Zhu Xi, he represents the Xingli school. So his interpretation followed the teaching of Cheng Yi. So the Xingli school argues that the morality, which can tell good from evil, originated from the human nature, originated from Xing. While the Xinxue school argues that the morality, which can tell good from evil, lies in our Xin, in our heart. So also known as the innate knowledge. So as the above interpretations adopts the Chengyi and Zhuxi system, I would introduce Wang Shouren's interpretation for comparison. Okay, Wang Shouren's interpretations is different from Zhuxi's interpretation, of course. I think the divergence mainly on the epistemology. Epistemology is the method of knowledge. Okay, Chengyi and Zhuxi believe that through the investigation of things, the intellectual mind as well as the original goodness of human nature can be enlightened. Okay, however, I will talk about this later because I've already mentioned that Zhuxi deliberately authored or added a supplementary note to interpret the notion 自知在格物. Okay, so I'll introduce Zhuxi's interpretation later on. But here I would like to introduce to you Wang Shouren's argument. Wang Shouren argued that the competence of moral practice can only be achieved through the enlightenment of the heart by sincerely stick to our judgment of good and evil. Okay, so Wang Shouren argues that the term 格物 emphasizes on distinguishing good and evil in day-to-day circumstances. Okay, in everyday life, the moment when we wake up, we have to do this and that. Each and every things we encounter, each and every circumstances we encounter, we have to make options. There are options. We have to make the decision on choosing that and not to choose the other. Choose this and choose that. Okay, we have to make decision. And when making decision, we have to judge whether this is correct or this is incorrect. This is good and this is evil. We have to make judgment based on our innate knowledge. This is Wang Shouren's argument. So Wang Shouren stick to his teaching on the so-called 致良知. Okay, so the term 格物 for Zhuxi is investigation of things. But for Wang Shouren, 格物 is to distinguish good and evil in day-to-day circumstances. So here, the word 格 is interpreted as judge by Wang Shouren instead of investigate. So the meaning of the character 格 is not investigation. It is a kind of judgment. So in the 传习录, a book edited by Wang Shouren's disciples or students, recorded Wang Shouren's teaching is 致良知. So the term 致知 emphasizes on the application of the morality. That is 致良知. The meaning of 致 is to practice. Okay, 致良知. If we translate the term 致良知, 致 is not to access to, no. It's not the completion. It is the practice, to practice morality. Okay, hence Wang Shouren adopts the original version, 亲民 rather than 新民. Okay, so if we refer to the very famous Wang Shouren's teaching on the teaching of the 4 clauses, is very famous, of the 四句教, when Wang Shouren was 50 years old. In an occasion, he has a gathering with his students, and he elaborates the so-called 四句教, the teaching of the 4 clauses. The first clause, the first sentence is 无善无恶心之体, meaning there is no distinction between good and evil in the original substance of the heart, the human mind. 有善有恶意之动, the moment an idea arises, such distinction exists. 知善知恶是良知. The autonomy of innate knowledge distinguishes good and evil. And lastly, the fourth clause is 为善去恶是格物. The judgment on things is to follow good and remove evil by applying our innate knowledge. Okay, so these are the Wang Shouren's interpretation. Okay, is quite different from Zhu Xi's interpretation. So from here, I would go into the key concepts of the Great Learning one by one. Okay. So the first key concept is 大学, the character 大, the key notion, the key concept 大. Now, what is the meaning of 大? Okay. The character 大 in the 甲骨文, the inscriptions on bones and tortoise shells, what we call the 甲骨文, is the form of a human body. It's according to an essay by Wang Guowei. It is the form of a human body, or a symbol of a human body, indicating the body of a great man, according to Creel, University of Chicago. Also a sinologist, a very famous sinologist, Gu Liya, Creel. The character 大 is a symbol, indicates the body of a great man, highlights the superiority of the great man. Okay, the character 大 can be translated into great or supreme, grand or heaven, celestial sky, depending on the context of the text. So this character 大, to a certain extent, it's has some connection with another character, with another key concept, the 天. I will discuss the notion 天later in the doctrine of the mean. Okay, so 大学, when we talk about 大学, 大学 means the great learning, or learning on a higher level, or learning or advanced learning, or learning towards the supreme reason. Okay, so this is the meaning of 大学. And 学, what's the meaning of 学? Yeah, people may, slip to other sentences and just ignore the etymological meaning of these key concepts. As a key concept, you see the character, the word 学 carry, some complex meaning. The popular translation of the word 学 is learn, of course, is to learn, right? We should also pay attention to the layers of meaning. I've always emphasized on the layers of meaning elaborated in the Chinese commentarial tradition. Okay, if we visit a very old dictionary, the 说文解字, authored by Xu Sheng of the Han Dynasty, there are two characters neighboring to each other. One is 教 and the other is 学. Okay. Nowadays, when we talk about teaching, in Chinese we say 教学, right? In English we say teaching. In Chinese we say 教学. But 教 and 学, they are not the same, but there are some connections for the meaning. Okay, so the two characters are neighboring to each other. 教 is followed by 学. According to 许慎说文解字, 许慎说文解字, the sequence of all the characters in this dictionary carries certain kind of meaning. The neighboring to each other, these two words neighboring to each other, indicates that there are some connections between the two characters. Okay, so an earlier form of the character 学 is this 学. Okay. Etymologically, the character spills on another character, 教, which means 上所施,下所效. The teachers teach and the students learn. Okay. Emphasizing to learn or to follow a role model, to renovate ourselves. Thus, 学 carries the meaning of following the steps of the ancient saints, of the great saints. Okay. We take the saints as the role model, and we renovate, and we follow their steps to renovate ourselves. And it's very interesting that in the 说文解字, Xu Sheng also explains 学 as 觉悟, which means awaken, the awakening of our inner values. So this is the key concept. 学 carries different meanings. So the great learning, when we look into the etymological meaning of the character, we will find it's not that simple. Okay. Okay, 大学之道. Now we come to the key concept, 道, the way. Okay. The way connecting to another key concept, 理, the reason. What we call in Chinese a verbal meaning. In Chinese, we always say 道理, 道理, right? But actually, these are two different key concepts. The way the Dao emphasizes on the dynamic aspect. The reason emphasizes on the static aspect. So the reason is exists in each and every being, each and everything in the world, in the mother nature. Okay, including trees, birds, the sky, the heaven, the sun, the moon, a human being. Okay, each and every being on earth carry some reason, and the Tao is the way, emphasizes on the dynamic aspect. So Li, reason, is the supreme reason for the existence of being, while Tao is the way of existence and the dynamic developments, including how the supreme reason gives birth to all being and how it is developed. So a concept associated to Tao, another concept, not only Li, but another concept associated to Tao is Qi, the vessel. So in the Yi Zhuan, in the Xi Zi Zhuan, there are two sentences. 形而上者谓之道，形而下者谓之气. The there are two levels in the existence. One is the Dao, another level is the Qi. Okay, referring to concrete things appear or form in the development of Dao. Okay. And De, now we move on to De. De, of course, the general translation for the character De is virtue. Ming De is what we call clear virtue or bright virtue. Say, for example, in Confucianism, we call it 三达德, benevolence, wisdom, and courage. 仁, 智仁勇. Okay. And Wu De, according to interpretation of the Han's philosophers, Zheng Xuan, say, for example, Zheng Xuan highlights the 5 virtues is 仁, 义, 礼, 智, 胜. Mirrors to the Wu Xing, 金木水火土, as well as the Wu Zhang, the 5 organs, 肝, 肺, 心, 肾, 脾, the liver, the lungs, the heart, the spleen, and the kidney. Okay. So just like I use this graph to highlight the 5 virtues or the 5 constants. What we call the 5 virtues is Wu De, or 5 constants, we call it Wu Chang. Okay. So for benevolence, Ren relates to the category of wood, and correspond to the liver for the 5 organ. And while Li correspond to fire, correspond to the heart and the ritual. Okay, the kidney correspond to water, and also correspond to wisdom or knowledge. The lungs correspond to metal and righteousness, Yi. And lastly is the spleen, correspond to earth and correspond to sacredness. Okay, so these are the 5 virtues, or what we call the 5 constants. Okay, these are the and now we come to the concept qin and xin. Qin mean is to love or to get close to the people. The original version of the Book of Ritual and elaborated by Wang Shouren is qin min. Okay, and for Cheng Yi and Zhu Xi, they argue that it is the character, the version should be corrected as xin min, self-renovation of the political leader, further extend to influencing the people. Okay, this is a new version. Okay, the qin min. And then lastly, I will introduce to you 自知格物. 自知在格物, 知 extend, approach, access, acquire, complete. This according to Zhu Xi's interpretation. So there are 2 layers of meaning on the character 知, argued by 2 schools. One is the empirical knowledge. So Zhu Xi argued that we have to, by investigation of things, we will acquire empirical knowledge. So this kind of knowledge we acquire via the method of reading, or we to follow the steps of the saints, and these are the empirical knowledge. But for Wang Shouren, is the innate knowledge, originated or embedded in our spiritual mind. Okay, in Neo Confucianism, there are 2 levels of knowledge. One is the 闻见知知, is the knowledge acquired via audio and visual. Right? 闻见, you see the 2 characters, 闻 and 见. 闻 means to listen. 见 means to watch, to see. Okay, so 闻见知知 is the knowledge acquired via audio and visual. And the other level is the 德性知知, is the moral knowledge acquired via the inner enlightenment of moral awareness. So in here, while the Xingli school argues the importance of striking balance between the 2, empirical knowledge and the innate knowledge, the Xinxue school argues the importance of the latter, argues that 德性知知 should be, much more important. Okay, and for the concept, for the key concept, 格物, okay, there are also 2 layers of meaning on 格物, argued by 2 schools. One is the investigation of things, I've just mentioned. The other is the correction through moral judgment, as I've just mentioned also. Okay, and for the concept, 物, 物 means not only trees, birds, fish, chopsticks and bowls and pans and all these kind of things, but also ethic relationship in kinship family. And traditional Chinese call them 伦物. 伦物 is things belongs to the kinship family. Okay, and Zhu Xi emphasizes on acquiring empirical knowledge. Okay, Wang Shouren emphasizes on inner enlightenment of moral awareness of the innate knowledge. both schools emphasize on 德性之知, but argue different approaches. Okay. So there is, I've just mentioned the 3 major revisions authored by Zhu Xi in the 四书章句集注 for the 大学. One of the major revision is that Zhu Xi added a supplementary note on elaborating the notion 格物致知. So Zhu Xi argued that there should be a paragraph elaborating the meaning of 格物致知, but it was lost. So Zhu Xi believed that it was lost in the original version. So Zhu Xi added a supplementary note on elaborating the notion 格物致知. 所谓致知在格物者，言喻知无之知，在及物而穷其理也. I'm not going to recite this paragraph. I will go directly to share with you some highlights. So there are several main points. Point number 1 is 人心之灵，莫不有之，莫不因其已知之理而易穷之. We have to catch the meaning of Zhu Xi's supplementary note. Note number 1 is human being is born to know everything. Zhu Xi believed that human being is born to know everything because human is the combination of the heaven and earth. In here, Zhu Xi presumes purity in human nature, which is originally good and perfect, supporting humans' capability of knowing everything. So Zhu Xi believed that human being, ever since he or she was born, he is supposed to know everything. Okay. And he also said, 盖人心之灵，莫不有知，天下之物莫不有理，唯于理有未穷，无知有不尽也. So in here, Zhu Xi argued that knowledge in our mind, granted by the heaven, corresponds to the reason embedded in all existence and beings. Only when we have acquired all reasons, our intellectual mind can be fully enlightened. So there is a process for Zhu Xi, okay? So this is why Zhu Xi argued the importance of investigation of things, okay? And the third point, the third highlight of this supplementary note is that Zhu Xi said, 用力之久而一旦豁然贯通，这众物之表里精粗无不道，无心之全体大用无不明. Zhu Xi argued that while all beings on earth are more or less the manifestation of the ultimate reason, in order to extend fully our knowledge to restore our spiritual mind, we need to investigate things to explore the inner reason. So through continuous effort of learning, according to Zhu Xi's description, is similar to a process of digestion. The intellectual breakthrough in Zhu Xi's word is 梦觉观 takes place. Before the intellectual breakthrough takes place, you are still dreaming. And when the intellectual breakthrough takes place, all of a sudden, you know everything, just like you wake up. Okay, so it's good. So Zhu Xi presumes there is an intellectual breakthrough during the process of learning. And when the intellectual breakthrough takes place in the spiritual mind, all of a sudden, we will understand the one supreme reason of the universe, as well as the knowledge of particular things, including the delicate at the inner level, as well as the contextual at the outer level. This is why Zhu Xi emphasized on the so-called 的表里精粗，众物之表里精粗无不道啊，表里精粗 is the delicate, okay, is the delicate at the inner level, as well as the contextual at the outer level. So there are altogether 2 levels. And from moral cultivation to the successful influence to the world, it is the articulation. Okay, so just mention this. I'm not going to repeat. Okay, let's move on to
Professor,
okay.
It's almost time for a break.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Let's take a break. Let's take a break. It's
yeah.
almost 50. Let's take a break. Let's stop here. Okay.
If there are any questions, maybe we could ask.
Yes, of course. Please.
Questions before we go for a break.
I have one. Can you listen me?
Please, please.
Yes.
About this intellectual breakthrough that
Intellectual
Zhu
breakthrough.
talks.
Yeah.
He believed that the ancient sages, the first kings of China, have this intellectual breakthrough, or Confucius reached this stage. He believed those persons actually knew everything.
Oh, yes. For Zhu Xi, he believed that each and every people, we are the same. So we are, all human beings are the same. We carry this kind of, talent of knowing everything. And the reason that we do not know the one supreme reason is that the desires, emotions, distort, create distortion to our innate knowledge. And so it hinders us from the intellectual breakthrough. And once, if we continuously make effort in investigation of things, and all of a sudden, and the intellectual breakthrough will take place. Yeah, this is recorded by Zhu Xi's student in the 诸子语类. In the 诸子语类, okay. But similar teaching also mentioned by other philosophers for Chinese Buddhism. Say, for example, the Chan the Chan philosophy, also mentioned about very similar to this kind of intellectual breakthrough. It's also like before the intellectual breakthrough takes place, it seems that you're dreaming, and all of a sudden you wake up and you know all the, you understand all the supreme reason, all the knowledge. You can, digest all the knowledge, and then the intellectual breakthrough takes place. It's also argued by Buddhist philosophers.
Thank you, Professor. Any other questions? If no, we can have a 10-minute break.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, welcome back. Shall we start now?
Yes, we still have 2 minutes, but
still 2 minutes. Oh, okay. No hurry, no hurry.
I have one question, maybe one simple question.
Yes, of course, please.
Because I'm a student of literature, not philosophy. So I'm more interested. You in the beginning you were talking that Wang Guowei made the contribution of the Xinmin or Qinmin, the category. Yeah,
it's not Wang Guowei. Wang Guowei discussed the etymological meaning of the character Tian Da.
Oh yes. Sorry. Yeah. So I was wondering because it's already the time. So what was the interpretation before him?
You mean the Qinmin or Xinmin or the character Da?
Maybe I have to go through the slide once.
Okay. If you want to know how the traditional scholars perceive the meaning of the character Da. Okay, it's not very clear because before Wang Guowei, very few scholar has the experience, has the knowledge on the Jiagu Wen. Yeah, Wang Guowei should be the first one who he used the symbol, he used the form of the Jiagu Wen to interpret the character as a symbol of a human body.
Okay, so it's
with an enlarged head.
Based on new excavation or solely on his genius?
Yes. Wang Guowei is very important in bringing new insights in sinology, in studying the old classics. Yeah. He is an asset.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we can start. Everyone is back.
Okay, thank you. And starting from here, I would like to discuss about the 8 particulars one by one from 平天下治国平天下 to 齐家治国 and then to 修身 and then backwards to 格物致知. Okay, first of all is the 平天下在治其国 Okay, this paragraph I'm not going to recite the content, but from a sociology point of view, the emphasis of Xiao is not only an ethical issue. Yeah, in nowadays angle, this is not only an ethical issue, but also play the role of taking care of the aged. Because in ancient time, everyone get old and everyone needs somebody to take care of himself or herself when he or she gets old, right? So aged people needs to be taken care. So the elaboration of 结举之道 highlights the value of fairness. That is, we shall not do to others the way we do not like others to do to us. And from another angle is that if we want other people to take care of ourselves, we have to take care of others. So this is kind of, 结举之道. So if this principle can be applied to the state and further extend to a broader community, and peace can be achieved. Okay, so this is the 治国平天下. The meaning of 平天下 is the author highlights 结举之道. And then the 齐家 is the managing or regulating the family. Okay, Confucianism highlights not only moral cultivation, but also family values. Okay, however, the two are interrelated to each other. Only when the Junzi has become a role model in the family, he or she and the family can become a role model of the state. So this is the idealism of classical Confucianism in ancient China. Nowadays, we should study not only the idealism itself, but also review the challenges encountered in later state in Chinese society, of course, because the Great Learning is a very old text, and of course, it's worth for us to to study not only the idealism itself, but also we should review the challenges encountered in later stage in Chinese society. Chinese society has also undergone, great changes. Okay, so I'm not going to dig into that. And then we talk about Xiushen. Okay, Xiushen is the cultivation of the body. Okay, and the author especially highlights emotions or prejudice. Okay, 人之所亲爱而辟焉，知其所见恶而辟焉，知其所畏敬而辟焉，知其所哀矜而辟焉，知其所傲惰而辟焉。故好而知其恶，恶而知其美者，天下鲜矣。We all have prejudice on our kids, on everything we nurture, on everything we keep, on everything we raise. So the fluctuation of emotions may also obstruct us from fairness in interpersonal relationship. We treat our family members differently according to our preference, instead of righteousness. Just like the proverbial saying, we raise kids, we also raise plants. However, we used to forgive our kids' mistake, but never satisfied with our plans. Okay, so this is the meaning of 人莫知其子之恶，莫知其苗之寿. Okay, we raise kids, we also raise plants. However, we used to forgive our kids' mistake, but never satisfied with our plans. Okay, and then 正心. Okay, again, the author highlights the emotions. So I will discuss with you about what I call the sentimental philosophy or emotional philosophy later on. Okay, the fluctuation of emotions may adversely affect our moral judgment. So as mentioned in the paragraph, 身有所愤志，则不得其正；有所恐惧，则不得其正；有所好乐，则不得其正；有所忧患，则不得其正。心不在焉，视而不闻，视而不见，听而不闻，食而不知其味。Okay, the fluctuation of emotions may adversely affect our moral judgment. Sometimes we may be distracted without any awareness. We may not be able to manage our mind to focus accurately on critical issues. How emotions can be managed or moderate. This is actually an important concern, but sometimes be neglected or always be neglected by philosophers of the later times. Okay, and then we come to the completion of 诚意. Okay, 所谓诚其意者，无自欺也，如恶恶臭，如好好色。Okay, 故君子必慎其独也. To be sincere to ourselves. So this elaborates the importance of sincerity. So I will discuss the doctrine of the mean very soon. In the doctrine of the mean, sincerity is also a key concept, a very important key concept in the philosophy of the doctrine of the mean. So please pay attention to the notion sincerity, 诚意. Okay, 诚 or 诚意. To be sincere to ourselves is the presumption of the fulfillment of sincerity to the community. we must admit what we feel, what we love, and what we hate. This is not easy because psychologically we used to hide our true feelings due to instinct of self-protection, to avoid recalling, say for example, to avoid recalling the experience of child abuse. Some of us have the very bad experience of being hit by our parents, being abused by when we were kids. Okay, sometimes psychologically we used to hide our true feeling. Okay, so this is not easy to be sincere to ourselves, even to ourselves. Okay, so courage, of course, courage is crucial for supporting us to admit our true feelings sincerely. So when we talk about the sincerity, the fulfillment of sincerity, it's not only to be sincere to ourselves, but also to be sincere to other people. So we need courage to the fulfillment, to fulfill sincerity. So this is also very important. So as I've just mentioned, sincerity is also a core concept in the doctrine of the mean. Okay. So now I have already completed introducing the great learning, and I would like to invite some questions from you. If you have any questions, you can on the great learning, you may ask a question. You have any questions on the great learning, or you need time to digest, and we may, I may invite questions at a later period.
Professor, we have one question from our.
Please.
Can you see the chat room?
The chat room. Let
long,
me see.
You can read the.
Not sure. I'm not sure. I cannot see the chat room.
It should be next to the share screen. But...
the button is called chat.
The button. No, because I'm in the share. The chat. Let me see. Oh yes.
Yes. Can you?
Yes. Does Zhu Xi consider other schools of thought outside of Confucianism orthodox texts as also integral to this journey of knowledge that lead to the breakthrough of supreme reason? Or will he say this breakthrough can only be attained through Confucianism and other orthodox texts, and not by saying learning of Taoism, Mohism, legalism? Oh, okay, it's very interesting. Of course, I do not have time. Otherwise, I will discuss about Zhu Xi's knowledge in Taoism, because Zhu Xi is a very, professional Taoist philosopher also. So, of course, Zhu Xi is so broad. Part of his thoughts actually comes from Chinese Buddhism. As I've just mentioned, he was affected by the Chan philosophy also. So I would not say the so-called, say, for example, I've just mentioned the intellectual breakthrough. It's not totally comes from the Confucian orthodox texts. Part of the notion, part of the thought comes from also from Taoism and Chan philosophy. But we need time to dig into that. So if you're interested in knowing more about Zhu Xi's thought, especially for the part of Taoism and Buddhism, I may be able to provide you some reading or materials later after this lecture. Okay. So this is this question is asked by Christopher.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for your question. This is a good question. Just because of the time, I may not be able to give you a very concrete answer. But the direction is that Zhu Xi's thought, he actually incorporate also Taoism and the Chinese Buddhism, especially the Chan philosophy. So not only the Confucian Orthodox texts. Okay. Any other questions?
We have one more question in the chat, but if we have questions from our participants, we have one more question.
Yeah, please.
Can you see that, Professor?
You mean in the
yes,
in the chat?
Yes.
Okay. No,
I also have a question.
There is only one question. There's only one question. I only see one question.
Okay. I'll repost it. Yes, please, Federico.
Please.
Yes, it's actually very related to the question of Veronica. Veronica asked how the different schools explain the great reason, Li. My question is very similar. Does Zhu Xi actually change the meaning of Li in his philosophy, or is actually very similar to the ancient meaning, the meaning of the Tashui? I guess there is a redefinition of the concept of Li, or Zhu Xi uses the same as Han Dynasty or Warring State period.
Okay. Which character are you referring to? Are you talking about the reason, the
reason principle,
the rituals, or the reason?
No, reason principle.
Oh, the reason. Actually, this is, you know, of course, there are some connections between Zhu Xi and the Orthodox Confucian texts, especially the 5 classics. But mostly, Zhu Xi has his own way in interpreting, in elaborating the notion Li. Because according to later philosophers, say, for example, Mo Zhongshan, he deliberately elaborates or he interprets, he understands Zhu Xi's Li as a kind of static reason existing in all things, in all beings, but not the dynamic part. So Mo Zhongshan argued that according to Zhu Xi, the notion Li is not a dynamic notion, it is a static notion. Okay, but instead, for the Xinxue school, for Lu Jiuyuan and Wang Shouren, the notion Li is always dynamic. It's always the reflection of our innate knowledge of the Liangzhi, of the moral knowledge, of the innate knowledge that which is the origin of our heart, of our the original goodness of our heart. Okay, so Zhu Xi has his own way to interpret the notion Li. It's very different. Even among the Song philosophers, it's very different. So if you refer to Mo Zhongshan's very famous book authored by Mo Zhongshan, is 心体与性体. 心体与性体. There's a very, you know, a very lengthy, there are 3 big volumes of 心体与性体. Mo Zhongshan has a very good elaboration on Zhu Xi's philosophy of reason, of Li. Okay. Thanks for your question. Yeah. Okay, if any of you have questions on the great learning, you may raise your question at a later stage. Okay, after I have completed the doctrine of the mean. Okay. So we still have time. Yeah, no hurry. Okay. So now I will move on to the doctrine of the mean. Okay. And the doctrine of the mean is authored by Zisi. So according to the Chinese textual tradition, it's authored by Zisi, who is the grandson of Confucius. The doctrine of the mean, the length is much longer than the Great Learning. So altogether, there are 33 chapters, or what we call 33 paragraphs, because some paragraphs are very short, but some paragraphs are very long, okay? So altogether, there are altogether 33 paragraphs comprises to become the doctrine of the mean. According to Zhu Xi's 四书章句集注, the doctrine of the mean is not separated as to become a text and certain commentaries, but altogether there are 33 33章, 33 chapters. Okay. But similar to the Great Learning, the doctrine of the mean is also a comprehensive summary of Confucianism, including its theory, its practice, the goals, and the methods, beginning from sentimental philosophy to the launching of ethical as well as ritual political system. So later scholars always emphasize on the moral cultivation, the part discussing the moral cultivation. But actually, the doctrine of the mean is discussed a lot in the ritual system, in the ancient ritual system, of course, from a very idealistic point of view. Okay. Okay, now we move on to, again, the Zhu Xi's introductory note. So it's very important because usually when we talk about the 四书, we use the version is edited by Zhu Xi's the 四书章句集注. So it would be very important for us to read Zhu Xi's introductory note before we study the doctrine of the mean, okay? And so Zhu Xi said, 子程子曰不偏之谓中，不义之谓庸。中者天下之正道，庸者天下之定理。此篇乃孔门传授心法，子思恐其久而差也。故彼至于书以授孟子，其书始言一理，中散为万事，末复合为一理。放之则迷六合，卷之则退藏于密，其味无穷，皆实学也。善读者，玩所而有得焉，则终身用之而不能尽者矣。Okay, the translation is, respectful Master Cheng said, 中 refers to the mean, which is the right way of the world, while Yong refers to the constant, which is the unchangeable. Okay, and Zhu Xi said, this work, the doctrine of the mean, represents Confucius' spiritual methodology authored by Zisi to preserve Confucius' original teaching, then later inherited by Mencius. It tells the one universal reason, 一理, the one universal reason, by elaborating the multiples, finally concluded with the one reason. By extending the meaning, it fits in the holistic world. By retracting back, it echoes to learner's mind. The whole of it is solid learning. This is what we call the 实学, solid learning. Okay, I've already translated Zhu Xi's introductory note to you. Okay. So the first chapter, of course, is the most important part, is the first chapter. It is always discussed by later philosophers. 天命之谓性，率性之谓道，修道之谓教。道也者，不可虚于理也，可离非道也。是故君子戒慎乎其所不睹，恐惧乎其所不闻。莫陷乎隐，莫显乎微，故君子慎其独也。Okay, then the translation. What heaven imparts to human is called humanity or human nature. To follow our nature is called the way. 率性之谓道. Cultivating the way is called education. 修道之谓教. The way cannot be separated from us for even one moment. What can be separated is not the way. Therefore, the profound person, the 君子, the profound person, is cautious what he or she does not see and apprehensive over what he or she does not hear. There is nothing more visible than what is hidden, and nothing more manifest than what is subtle. So pay attention to the literature of the sentence. This is actually very beautiful. This is beautiful. 莫陷乎隐，莫显乎微. There is nothing more visible than what is hidden, and nothing more manifest than what is subtle. Or in other words, I translate it in another way. It can only be seen when no one sees it. It can only manifest when no one knows it. Okay, so hence the 君子 is mindful of himself in solitariness. 君子慎其独也. Okay, 慎独 is also a very important key concept in the two books, in these two books. The Great Learning, as well as the Doctrine of the Mean, elaborates a lot in 慎独. What we call 慎独 is solitariness or solitude or solitariness. 慎独, we have to the mindful of himself or oneself in solitariness. Okay, and the later part of the first chapter is 喜怒哀乐之谓发谓之中，发而皆众结谓之和。中也者，天下之大本也；和也者，天下之达道也。至中和，天地未焉，万物欲焉。Okay, here is the translation. Before the feelings of pleasure, anger, sorrow, and joy are aroused, it is called equilibrium. 喜怒哀乐之谓发谓之中. When these feelings are aroused and each and all attain due measure, it is called harmony. 发而皆众结谓之和. Equilibrium is the great foundation of the world, and harmony is universal path. Okay, 中也者，天下之大本；和也者，天下之达道。Okay, 至中和，天地未焉，万物欲焉. When equilibrium and harmony are realized to the highest degree, heaven and earth will attain their proper order with all beings between heaven and earth flourish. Okay, so you see the first chapter is very beautiful. Okay, here I have some highlights on the key concepts. Again, the key concepts. I will discuss the key concepts one by one. 中庸和天命性道成. Okay, 中 meanings mean medium, or moderation, or equilibrium. For the character, for the key concept, 用 is ordinary, universal, constant, unchanged, or unchangeable. 和 is harmony. 天, there are many ways to translate the notion 天. Heaven or celestial sky, including the sun, the moon, the stars, okay, what we call the three lights, 三光, okay, the three lights. Or God or universe, including visible universe or invisible universe. Okay, the 天 being the mandate of heaven. Okay, and 性 is humanity or human nature. Dao is the way I've just mentioned, introduced to you the Dao, the way. And 诚 is sincerity. Okay. Okay, first of all, I would like to discuss the key concept, 中. Etymologically, the etymology of the character 中 is actually a symbol of a flag or a stake for indication, indicating a particular area or a particular position in a particular area. Okay. And the second is the middle or the central part of an area, including the abstract meaning. Okay, including the abstract meaning. The third is the middle stage of a continuous development in time. Okay, so the right-hand side are the symbols in the 经文 and 甲骨文. And for the key concept, 中, I would like to discuss especially, it is also a concept originated from the I Ching philosophy, from the 周易 philosophy, or what we call the I Ching philosophy. Okay, which declares the dynamic interaction of the two ultimate forces, the yin force and the yang force. Okay, you see the on the right hand side of the PPT, it is a symbol of the Qian hexagram. There are altogether 64 hexagrams in the I Ching, and this is the first hexagram, the hexagram Qian, Qian Gua. Okay, as research has already pointed out, among the 6 lines of a hexagram, I'm not sure whether you have the knowledge of the I Ching, especially the 64 hexagrams. All the hexagrams carry 6 lines. It's actually 2 trigrams. It's a combination of 2 trigrams. Each trigrams have 3 lines. And 2 trigrams combine together to become 6 lines and to become a hexagram. So there are altogether 6 lines for a hexagram. And we read the 6 lines from the bottom to the top. Okay, all the 64 hexagrams, there is a standard way to read the 64 hexagrams. We read the lines from the bottom to the top. Okay, so the second line from the bottom, the second line locates at the middle of the lower trigram. And upward until we reach the 5th line. The 5th line is in the middle part of the upper trigram. Okay, so the second line and the 5th line is actually locates at the middle of the trigrams, the lower and the upper trigram. So we call it the 中爻. The middle lines are the second, excuse me, is there any? Okay, so there are altogether 6 lines, and the second line and the 5th line locates at the middle. So if we investigate all the 384 lines of the 64 hexagrams, the middle stage, the middle lines, I mean the second line and the fifth line, brings auspicious indefinition outcome most frequently. Okay, so we always argue that the I Ching philosophy emphasizes on the middle stage of a development circulation. Okay, according to the I Ching philosophy, the I Ching philosophy highlights the never-ending circulation of the universe, driven by the two forces, the yin force and the yang force, or the yin air and the yang air. Okay, the two airs or the two forces. Okay, driven by the two forces, the universe continuously follows a pathway. Is a never-ending circulation. Everything's, the life and death of everything, including human being, including all beings, or everything in the universe, including the stars, including the galaxies. Okay, so all the galaxies will die, So, and once the galaxy dies, and it may become another supernova, right? And then it gives birth to another new lives. So if somebody asks me about the philosophy of the I Ching, I will tell him or her, it is every ending is a new beginning. Okay, every ending is a new beginning. So it is very important. So the actually the I Ching philosophy admires the middle part in a in the circulation, in the middle part. It is the auspicious path. Say, for example, for a human being, if he or she born and then spend a whole lifetime and from life to death. Okay, it is the middle part of his life or her life is the most valuable part. Okay, he or she is going to develop himself or herself. Okay, so this is the philosophy of Zhong. So when we talk about the doctrine of the mean, the key concept Zhong also echoes to the I Ching philosophy that admires or treasure the middle part in a dynamic process of the universe. Okay, and the key concept, Yong. Now we talk about the key concept of Yong. Cheng Yi's interpretation on Zhong Yong is 不偏之谓中不异之谓用 is the unchangeable. Yong is the unchangeable. If we also refer to Zhuangzi's 齐物论, the second chapter of the book of Zhuangzi, Zhuangzi describe, Zhuangzi interpret the concept Yong as 用也, 用也, 通也, 通也, 得也. According to Zhuangzi, Yong is the function of being, the universality of the function, and the gaining and completion of life through this universality. Okay. There's also Yong. And then we move on to Tian and Tianming. Tianming 智慧性. Okay. The etymology of the character Tian is actually a symbol of the human body with an enlarged head representing the highest part of a life form. For human being, this highest part is the head. For the world, this highest part is the celestial sky, representing the heaven as well as the supreme cosmological order. Okay, so the etymology of the character Tian is actually a symbol of a human being with an enlarged head. Okay, but the notion Tian represents the supreme heaven, the great heaven. And then Tianming, the mandate of heaven. In the early classics, such as the Shi Jing, the Book of Songs, and the Shangshu, the Book of History, the term Tianming are monopolized by emperors, especially Wen Wang, King Wen. The term does not apply to ordinary people or even Junzi. So say, for example, the Shi Jing, Da Ya Wen Wang, it says, Mu Mu Wen Wang, Wu Ji Xi Jing Zhi, Jia Zai Tian Ming. Shangshu Kang Gao Tian Nai Da Ming Wen Wang. You see the Ming, Tian Ming. This term, the mandate of heaven, is not applied to ordinary people. It's nothing to do with ordinary, nothing to do with Junzi. It's monopolized by the emperor. This is a special term used by the emperor to describe the mandate of heaven is given to a particular king or to a particular emperor. Okay, so only when we understand the very old meaning of the mandate of heaven, we can fully understand the creative interpretation of the concept declared by Zisi. So Zisi, in the doctrine of the mean, he is, marvelous. Zisi, he gives a new meaning in interpreting the notion Tianming. Because according to, with Zisi's good effort, the concept Tianming will no longer be limited to political ideology, highlighting the legitimacy of a new emperor, but become a philosophic idea referring to universal humanity bestowed by heaven. So 天命之谓性, 只是 refers to, the universal idea applied to all human beings. Through the lengthy period of canonization of the Zhongyong, the sacredness of humanity launched in Chinese philosophy. So this is very important. So we have to pay special attention on Zisi's creative interpretation of the term Tianming. Okay, so Tianming is no longer a special term used by the emperors, but broadly or universally applied to all human beings. So Zisi did a great job. Okay, 天命之谓性. Now, what is 性? The general translation of 性 is human nature or humanity. The character 性 develops actually from another character, 生. Okay, so actually, the character 性 develops from another character, 生, which means born or give birth to or life form. 性 is humanity, the original goodness of human being given by heaven. According to Mencius, it is originally good without carrying any evilness. Of course, according to Mencius' argument. However, Zhu Xi also refers to the interpretation of the Han philosophers and use 见顺五行之德. Okay, so Zhu Xi in the 四书章句集注 in the 中庸集注, Zhu Xi especially Zhu Xi deliberately provide another description on the notion 性 is 见顺五行之德. What is the meaning of 见顺五行之德? 见 actually refers to 乾. 顺 actually refers to 坤. It means yin and yang, representing the heaven and earth. Okay, so Zhu Xi argued that the human nature is actually a combination of the yin and yang, and also the 5 phases, and also the 5 金木水火土, the 5 elements, or what we call the 5 phases. So the relationship between 五行 and 五德, I've already discussed this. You may remember the picture I show you, the 5 virtues and the 5 constants, right? Okay. So now we move on to the key concept, Dao. Okay. Dao is the way connecting to another key concept, Li. I've just elaborate on this. And okay, I'm not going to repeat this. We can skip this. To Cheng, sincerity. Okay. Sincerity, there is a paragraph among the 33 paragraphs in the Doctrine of the Mean. There is a special paragraph elaborating the notion of Cheng. It says, 自成名谓之性，自名成谓之教。成者名矣，名者成矣。This is a key paragraph. Pay attention to this. This is a key paragraph which drew later philosophers' attention in discussing how humanity should always follow the nature of heaven. Okay. It argues that the enlightenment of sincerity is the original humanity, and the way to enlighten our sincerity, 自明成. Okay, the enlightenment of sincerity is 自成名. Okay, the way to enlighten our sincerity is 自明成. It's education. So a 君子, a profound person, should simply be himself or to be herself, sincerely, no more, no less. Just be yourself, just like the harmony of the nature. If it is sunny, let it be sunny. If it is rainy, let it be rainy. We need sun, we need sunshine, we need rain, we need wind. All of these, natural phenomenon is needed. Not too much, not too less. Okay, just be ourselves. So when we are happy, when we are angry, when we feel sorrow, when we feel joy, just be ourselves. So 自成名谓之性，自名成谓之教. So the author of the Doctrine of the Mean, which is 子思, he emphasized on, the moderation, the art of moderating our emotions to lead to moral cultivation. So we have to pay attention to the two ends. On the one end is the management or the moderation of emotions. On the other end is the moral cultivation. Okay, and let me finish discussing the Cheng before we take the second break. Okay. 为天下之至诚，唯能尽其性；能尽其性，则能尽人之性；能尽人之性，则能尽物之性；能尽物之性，则可以占天地之化育；可以占天地之化育，则可以与天地参矣。You see the translation. Now, here the translation. Self-accomplishment should never be limited to the self. It should be further extended to other people, to a broader community, to the state, and then to the world. So there is a process of extension. Sincerity is the enlightened, the humanity of the self, and then to enlighten the humanity of the other through education, and to develop the nature of things, to assist the transformation and nourishing process of the heaven and earth, forming a trinity of heaven, earth, and humanity. 天地之化育, 参天地之化育. In here, it highlights the so-called what we call the 三才, the three natures, okay, the three natures, yeah, 三才, 占天地之化育的天地人, okay, the heaven, the earth, and the humanity. Okay. So actually, 成者自成也，道自道也. So sincerity is simply the self-accomplishment. So what I've just mentioned is the fulfillment of sincerity, 诚意. Just like the way follows its own pathway to develop in the universe. So 诚 is very important. Okay, Robert, yes. Shall we move on to another break, or is there any questions from any of you would like to ask a question before we take a break?
Mm-hmm.
Can I make a small question?
Yeah, please.
Yes, in the first slide about sincerity, you mentioned sincerity. Yes, there was, it said that education is the way to enlighten sincerity. And education uses the character of Chao. But you before said that there are two kinds of understand education. One is Chao, that is a professor teaching to the students. And the other is Xue, that is understand the way of the king. So
this is the great learning.
The way to enlighten sincerity is more closer, wouldn't be closer to Xue than Chao?
Oh, yes, yes. 谓之教, yes, there is, the two characters carry similar meaning, but from different angle. You know, from a teacher's angle is 教, from a student's angle is 学, right? So, so these two are intersupportive to each other, the two notions. So this is why Xu Shen in the 说文解字, he put these two characters to put them together, neighboring to each other, because the two characters intersupportive to each other. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
I have one more question, Professor.
Please.
May I ask?
Please.
Returning to the question of reason, actually, because
reason.
You said, because you said about the inner knowledge, that the inner knowledge can be, in a sense, equal to the mandate of heaven, right? Because
innate knowledge, I-N-N-A-T-E, innate.
Yes.
Innate knowledge.
Yes. And then we also discussed that the mandate of heaven can be expressed through reason, right? But the other thing was that humanity is also a part of the mandate of heaven and human nature itself. So my question is, can we say that reason is the core of the human nature, the big reason is the core of the human nature and humanity, or this is a wrong, I don't know, equation?
Well, it should not be, I cannot say it's wrong, but it's just another way of expression. But we have to bear in mind that we have to think why the author of the Doctrine of the Mean highlights sincerity instead of reason, right? Of course, the author, which is 只是 the reason, 只是 use the word sincerity, 诚, instead of using 理 or 天 to highlight the way, is that I think 只是 believe that 诚 is a word can be applied to the mother nature on the one hand, and can be applied to humanity on the other. So actually the notion 诚 plays the role of like bridging up the individual and the mother nature. So this is why he used 诚 instead of using 理. Of course, it is not incorrect for you to use the notion 理, because for the Song philosophers, or the philosophers of the Song dynasty and the Ming dynasty, many philosophers use the notion 理. That's why we call them 理学家, right? 理学, 宋明理学, right? Okay, is that 理 is also a core concept in the Songming philosophy, and that's why we call them New Confucianism, because this is some new ideas used by them to describe or to interpret the ancient classics. Okay, so you use the term 理. It's not wrong. It's also correct. It's also correct. Yeah, it's just another way of interpretation.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have 2 questions in the chat room.
Okay. Do we have question in the chat room? No? No at this moment.
Let me repost. Oh, that might be because you are not panelists in Zoom. Can you see that now?
No, I can see, I did not see any questions.
Oh.
Yeah, in the chat room.
It's very short, I can read.
Yeah, please.
One of our viewers, Veronica, is asking, can I ask Professor Chen if there is, if there is time, if Mencius and Zisi disagree about Tianmin, the understanding or legitimacy of the term, is there?
No, actually, there is no obvious evidence that telling that Mencius holds a different view with Zisi. I think Mencius, most of, in most part, I think Mencius inherit Zisi's philosophy. Yeah. So there is no different views among between them.
Thank you.
Okay, another question?
Steven, do you have a question? Or it's just discussion with participants?
I don't want to take much time. It's just that I was trying to follow something, Professor Chung, that you mentioned. I think you were talking about the etymology of the word Jung, and you made a reference to chapter 2 of the Zhuangzi, and I didn't catch what you were talking about there, and I just wondered if you could elaborate a little bit.
Okay. You want me to elaborate on the notion Jung, right? The notion Jung is, let me see. Oh, here, right? Here.
Yes.
Yes. It is elaborated by Zhuangzi in the Qi Wu Lun. In the Qi Wu Lun. He mentioned, I'm not going to the original text, because the original text, there is a long paragraph. So I just quote Zhuangzi's, his words. 用也者用也, 用. The meaning of 用也 is the function of beings, the function. 用 is not the use, it's the function of all beings. Say, for example, a tiger eats a deer, or and so forth. And 用也者通也, 通 means the universality of the function. The universality of the function. The mother nature, this is the way the mother nature functioning. Okay. And the gaining and completion of life through this universality. So Zhuangzi is actually from a more natural philosophy point of view to interpret the notion 用 But coming back to the doctrine of the mean, I think Zisi argued that the doctrine of the mean, the philosophy of the mean is nothing different from daily life. We can use this in daily life. It happens. It always comes along with our daily life. So this is ordinary to ordinary people. This is ordinary philosophy to ordinary people. So sincerity, every moment in our daily life, in our day-to-day circumstances, we have to be sincere to ourselves, to other people. Is nothing special. So Zisi and Zhuangzi, both of them argue that the notion yong is the universality of the function. But Zisi focus more on the moral philosophy, and Zhuangzi focus more on the natural philosophy. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, we.
Okay.
Yes.
Shall we take a break?
Yes. Yeah, we didn't.
Shall we take a break?
Let's take a 10-minute break. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, I will have approximately 40 minutes. Yeah, 40 minutes. Okay, so I have to wrap up everything. I think use 30 minutes and I save 10 minutes for some questions.
Mm-hmm.
Time flies.
Yes.
Will the students have a copy of my PPT? Are they supposed to have a copy or no?
We have the copy of your the PDF version of your PPT that you sent. That's the shortened version.
Sorry, when?
The in the email you sent to us, you sent us 2 versions of your PowerPoint. So one is
yes,
and they have the PDF version, so the one with the fewer slides.
Yeah. Well, I would be. It would be fine for me if you share the PDF version with the students. I think it would be helpful to them.
Yeah, they have the PDF version.
Okay. So you have already sent them?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Some professors had copyright issues with some photos that they use in their PPTs. So in some cases, we cut some slides before.
Oh, I understand.
Yes. But if you
understand,
if you are okay with sharing the PPT, then
have you already shared with the students?
Yes, they already have, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, okay. That will be fine. No problem. Okay, let's move on. Okay, shall I start now?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so here are the major highlights of the doctrine of the mean, the nature of humanity and the method to enlightenment. Okay, so I sum up the whole passage because the doctrine of the mean is very long. It's a combination of I've just mentioned 33 paragraphs. Okay, so there are a few highlights. First is the nature of humanity and the method to enlightenment. The second is the manifestation of humanity in various groups of people. Say, for example, ordinary people, the Junzi, the kings and the emperors. Okay. And third is the method to the extension and completion of humanity, is focusing on the key concepts I've just mentioned, from moral cultivation of the Junzi to the ordering of the state and the ultimate influence to the world. And fourth is the ontology of sincerity, the scope and the extensions and the dimensions. Okay. And fifth is the nature, the function and spirit of rituals. And actually, rituals is one of the key points elaborated in the doctrine of the mean. And I have no idea why many researchers, many scholars, they do not rarely pay much attention on the elaborations of the rituals mentioned in the doctrine of the mean, but that would be a very important part also. Okay, so the function and the spirit of rituals across family relationship, statecraft, and the political system. So this is a kind of what I call the Confucian idealism. Okay. And last but not least, I would like to draw your attention to the notion of 慎独 I've just mentioned. In both books, both the Great Learning and the Doctrine of the Mean, there are two key notions we should pay special attention to. One is the sincerity, 诚, while the other is 独, 慎独. We have to be very careful on solitude, okay, or what we call the philosophy, the method of solitude, or solitariness, okay. Say, for example, the 大学, how the 大学 elaborates on the notion 诚意. The Great Learning says, 所谓诚其意者，无自欺也，如恶恶臭，如好好色，此之谓自谦，故君子必慎其独也. Sincerity means not to lie to ourselves, and sincerity can be gained through self-awareness in solitariness. Because only when we are alone, we are solitude, we are in the state of solitude, we are sincere to ourselves. We can see the strength and weakness of ourselves, okay, of our character. And in the Doctrine of the Mean, 子是 said, 是故君子戒慎乎其所不睹，恐惧乎其所不闻。莫羡乎隐，莫显乎微，故君子慎其独也. I've just mentioned a profound person is dread of what he or she cannot see and hear, all profound sentiments exposed to ourselves in solitariness, in which a profound person are highly aware of. Okay, so 慎独 it's also a key part in moral cultivation. This is the two special significance of the two books, the Doctrine of the Mean as well as the Great Learning. One is sincerity, 诚, while the other is 慎独. Okay, so I would like to draw your attention to these two key notions. Of course, if time allows, I would like to elaborate more, but I have very limited time, and therefore I will move on to the next part of my lecture. Is I would like to draw your attention to some emotions and sentimental philosophy, the major highlights which are meaningful to nowadays mankind. Okay. So emotions, sentimental philosophy in the Great Learning. Say, for example, I would like to discuss into the lines mentioning 身有所愤志则不得其正，有所恐惧则不得其正. I'll just go through this in the Great Learning. Okay, the author said, anger, fear, joy, anxiety, love, hatred, reverence, sorrows, arrogance may hinder 君子 from practicing righteousness and equilibrium. Okay, 不得其正, 不得其正 means hinder 君子 from practicing righteousness and equilibrium. So emotions, of course, we're human beings. We have emotions, we have sentiments. It's also natural, right? So it's natural for us to carry different emotions, different sentiments, and not only one at a time, but sometimes they're it's very complicated. Things there are more than one emotions arise at a time, right? So we're human being is unavoidable. So the art of managing our emotions and sentiments is the crucial way to moral cultivation. This is the major argument in the Great Learning and the Doctrine of the Mean. So from nowadays philosophical angle, we should pay special attention to the art of emotion or sentimental philosophy. Okay. And in the doctrine of the mean, it also mentioned by the author 子思，喜怒哀乐之谓发，谓之中发而皆终结，谓之和。It discusses about the emotions when the emotions are aroused or before the emotions are aroused. Okay, so the state of equilibrium can only be achieved before the arising of emotions. If we can access to equilibrium, we will be able to manage our emotions to be due appropriate. Okay, later philosophers focus on discussing the state of 未发 before the emotions are aroused. They pay special attention on the notion 未发 before the emotions are aroused, especially the Korean philosophers of the 18th century Korea, in the Chosen Korea time. Many of them refer to the notion 静 mentioned in the chapter 乐记 in the 礼记 in the book of rituals. In the 乐记 said 人生而静，天之性也. Okay, so staying calm in calm and peace. Ideally, human nature should be calm and peace. And in calm and peace, we can, we can approach the state of equilibrium. We can get close to the state of equilibrium. Okay, this is the meaning of before the emotions are aroused. Okay, and emotions and emotions and sentimental philosophy develops from the spiritual tradition of Confucianism. Let's look at the spiritual tradition in Confucianism. So bear in mind that a spiritual tradition in Confucianism, as such, I would like to draw attention to the nature of Confucianism, because Confucianism, some people argue that about 10 or 20 years ago, there are many scholars across the East and West started a debate, debating on whether Confucianism is a religion or not. Okay, to me, I think Confucianism is not a religion. It's neither monotheism, nor polytheism, nor anti-theism. Confucianism is not a religion, but Confucianism consists of religiousness, what I call religiousness, the element of religion. But actually, Confucianism is not a religion, because Confucianism did not admit a transcendental God. There is no transcendental God, the idea of transcendental God. Some scholars argue that, in China, there are many Confucian temples, right? The Kong Miao, there are many Confucian temples. And the students, they worship Confucius in the Confucian temple. They follow all the rituals just like the temple of other religions. But no, Confucius is not a god. Confucius is not a transcendental god. Confucius is a human being. It's a saint. It's a sacred, the sacredness. It's a saint. It's an ancient saint, but not a transcendental god. Okay. But coming back to Confucianism, Confucianism highlights moral cultivation. Is that the inner nature, the inner goodness, the original goodness in human nature is admitted in Confucianism. And Confucianism highlight the 5 virtues, as I've just mentioned, the key ideas, 仁义礼智胜, right? Benevolence, righteousness, rituals, wisdom, and sacredness. And the method is morality based on moderation of sentiments and emotions, as well as through the management of desire, 欲. Say, for example, the Song philosophers, they discuss a lot in the method of the management of desire, 欲, all kinds of 欲, different kinds of 欲. Okay, this different kind of desire. So epistemology of humanities in Chinese philosophy is that from empirical knowledge to moral knowledge, it is the art of inward. Okay. It is the art of inward. Traditional Chinese philosophers differentiate 文见之知 and 德性之知. I've just discussed this in previous pages. Empirical knowledge and moral knowledge. Traditional Chinese philosophers direct knowledge acquired from outer world towards the heart and the intellectual mind to develop insight of life, to polish and improve our personality or our behavior through various means of cultivation, including the tranquility of the mind, reflection, correction of conduct, remorse, etc. And I've also discussed the two levels of 格物致知, acquired knowledge, and not only empirical knowledge, not only through the method of the process of investigation of things, but also to approach, to retrieve our innate knowledge. Okay, so the doctrine of the mean say, 为天下至诚为能经纶天下之大经，立天下之大本. Only pure sincerity can support the 君子 to reinstate the general principles and reinforce the fundamentals. Okay, and so as mentioned by 荀子 said, 君子之学也，入乎耳，出乎心，不乎事体，行乎动静，传而言，软而动，亦可以为法则。荀子 also, you know, there's a paragraph in 荀子 劝学, encouraging learning, said, for a profound person, for a 君子, to learn is to listen with the ears, store in the heart, spread through the body and the limbs, and act in behavior. He carefully speaks and acts. Every slightest movement and single word serves as model. So of course there are difficulty, there are weakness, right? There are weakness, the mismanagement of emotion. Say for example, in the Great Learning, the author said, 人之所其所亲爱而辟焉，之所见恶而辟焉. I've just gone through this paragraph. Love, hate, fear, sorrow, ignorance lead to improper behavior. So we raise kids, we also raise plants. People used to forgive their kids' mistake and never satisfied with their plans. Okay. So this, we all have weakness, and the weakness also falls within the categories of emotions. So when we talk about moral cultivation, we have to stick to what I've just mentioned, sincerity and all the 5 virtues and so forth. There's the cultivation of the self, I've just mentioned this. And Qing, the theory of Qing, see, Qing is always, not sometimes, but always underestimated by philosophers, I think. Yeah. In recent decades, psychologists, psychological, you know, scholars, they contribute a lot in reminding us the importance of moderation of emotions. There's ordinary people think that every one of us is capable to manage all sentiments and emotions, but unfortunately, it's not the case in reality. You know, some people are capable to manage sadness, but not happiness. Some capable to manage angry, but not capable to love. Okay, so we have different emotions, and different people have different, you know, management skills or management competence. The ignorance of sentiments and emotions, and we may easily distinguish a handicapped person from a healthy person, because physical handicap is relatively easy to recognize, but it is often very hard for us to distinguish people who is handicapped mentally or intellectually. He or she may be capable of expressing anger, happiness, or sentiments mentioned above, but more important that these people are ordinary people in our daily life. It's very hard for us to tell which one is capable or not capable to manage anger. Okay. So it is the human life form. I'm not going to go through this. Okay, the qi-qing. Okay, I'd like to introduce to you the qi-qing. In the chapter Li Yun, Li Yun of the Li Ji, the Book of Rituals, the 7 emotions are mentioned. Not only 喜怒哀乐, but 喜怒哀惧爱恶欲, the happiness, anger, grief, fear, love, and distaste and desire. The qi-qing highlights the complexity of sentiments and emotions. As far as emotions are concerned, they are not limited to only 7. Say, for example, the sense of du, solitude. I've just mentioned shen du, solitude. In the Zhongyong, which refers to a superior moral, spirituality that comes with loneliness, solitariness, a kind of emotion not included in the 7 emotions. So 7 emotions actually is not only 7, but many, many emotions, which we should also know can be further differentiated into smaller categories. Say, for example, if we talk about joy or happiness, there are different kinds of joy, right? Happiness, there are different kinds of happiness. Happiness comes from, comes from food. It's very different from parents' love, right? So we have happiness, we have different kind of happiness. So according to the chapter Yue Ji, I've just mentioned Yue Ji in the Book of Rituals, 凡因者生人心者也，情动于中，故形于声，声成文谓之音. Insofar as it denies the independence of sentiments and emotion, arguing that the nature of human being is driven by desire and impulses. But sentiments and emotions are unpredictable. Okay, they are part of ourselves, attaching to our physical as well as to our spiritual body. And they are always provoked by what we encounter in day-to-day circumstances in various environments. So the art of handling emotions is crucial. Okay, I would like to draw your attention to another important text, an excavated text. It is the chapter 五行 in the Guodian bamboo slips, the Guodian 楚简. Okay. It says why it's not 不变不悦. Why there is no content? Okay, let's skip that page. I do not have that page. Okay, in the doctrine of the mean, 君子戒慎乎其所不睹，恐惧其所不闻. It is the art of tranquility, isolation, and equilibrium. As I've just mentioned about the 慎独, the art of solitude. So ordinary people rarely listen or observe their emotions. However, a profound person listen to the mind and heart and be aware of the subtle changes of emotions. A learner should listen and observe inward to be aware of the changing of emotions before and after. And moral cultivation would not be simply to follow ritual principles, but inward exploration of the mind. So this moral cultivation mostly fall within the scope of the heart, the mind, the intellectual mind, and beginning from the management of emotions. So the art of equilibrium is when emotions are aroused and each and all attain due measure and degree is called harmony. So on the one end is the moderation of emotions, beginning from the moderation of emotion. On the other is to achieve harmony, is that we have the competence to manage our emotions and sentiments. Okay, so let me go to the moral of today's lecture. First of all, number one is sincerity is not only the core spirit of moral cultivation, but also the soul of the mother nature. The spiritual tradition in Confucianism is worth to explore. I don't know why there's the spiritual tradition in Confucianism is worth to explore. This is number one. Number two is moral cultivation means an effective management of ourselves, a better preparation for life, a fundamental principle of interpersonal skill. So moral cultivation is crucial to us in our life. Number three is we should help ourselves before we help others. We should save ourselves before we save the world. So the art of moderation of emotion is the beginning. Number four is we should focus on those we love, not those we hate, starting from the self to our family to the community. And we should admit the fact that moral cultivation has its limit. No harm to seek help from counselor or psychiatric therapy if necessary for mental health. Okay, so this is we learn from the ancient classics, and we also seek help if necessary from the counselor or psychiatric therapy if necessary. So last but not least is the reading list. I provide you some reading materials for your reference. I believe Wen has already shared with you 4 reading assignments, 4 reading materials for your reference. So if you have time, please read those materials I provided. Okay, I think I will stop here, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Chen. Thank you very much for the lecture.
You're welcome.
We can take some questions. Guys, do you have any questions? For our viewers, yes, you can type in the question and answer this session that Professor can see. We realized that one.
Yes, yes. Oh, there is a question. I'm glad to know the difference of chat and Q&A. Great, Professor.
It's not a question for you, Professor.
Oh, no, no, no. Of course not.
Professor?
Please.
I would like to hear if you have more to say about what you called the art of solitude. You said that you wouldn't have much time to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I gather that it has something to do with our moral cultivation, and I can that solitude might be required for some sort of introspection. But I wonder, I assume there's more to it than simply what I've already gleaned. And I wonder if you speak a little more about it.
Yes, thank you very much for your question. Actually, if I have time, I would like to introduce to you a very famous philosopher in the late Ming dynasty. I should say the transition between from the Ming dynasty to the Qing dynasty. It should be the middle of 17th century China. Very famous philosopher, Liu Zhongzhou, or what we call Liu Jishan. You never heard of him? Never heard of him? I may type. Okay, let me see. How shall I key in the?
You can type in the chat. Use the
I
chat.
cannot find the chat. I cannot find the chat. Maybe I close the.
Or maybe yes, because you are sharing.
Maybe I close the.
I think if you,
yes, Stephen.
I think if the professor stops sharing his screen, his chat window will become visible.
Yes, I'm trying to stop sharing, but how can I stop sharing? How can I stop sharing? Oh, yes. Oh, very good.
Can you see the chat function near the share screen button?
Yes. Can you see what I typed? Liu Zhongzhou, Liu Jishan. No?
No, we haven't received.
Okay. Because I can only oh yes,
he's
yes,
writing
here.
and answer.
Liu Zhongzhou. Yeah. Liu Zhongzhou is a very famous philosopher in the late Ming dynasty, in the late Ming period. He's the mentor of Huang Zhongxi, or what we call Huang Lizhou. He argued that the Shen Du,
Thank you. Good.
actually, he argues that the notion Du, he called it Du Ti. This is his term, a special term declared by Liu Zhongzhou. Okay, a special term, Du Ti. It's a ontological origin of the universe. And this is ordinary people is very hard for ordinary people to understand, but only when we are alone, we will face ourselves, we will look into ourselves, and we will understand the relationship between ourselves and the universe and the Mother Nature. So this is a kind of, this philosophy is unique in the Ming Dynasty. He is the only one who highlights the character Du, the notion Du. Okay, so what we call is the philosophy of solitude. Okay, so if you have time, you may want to read into the Liu Zhongzhou Wenji, his essays, discussing a lot on the philosophy of solitude. So any other questions? So I believe most of you have already had a copy of my PPT, right? So if you have questions, you can share with me later via email or via other channel.
Thank you once again, Professor Chen. Very detailed.
You're
very
welcome.
A lot.
You're welcome. Well, actually, I active check email for the PPT I just sent. Okay, good. No. Actually, I have a question. What do you think about the relationship between Chinese philosophy and philosophy? Any of you want to respond to my just curious? Stephen, you have anything to share?
Philosophy is we in the West. Sorry, you mean philosophy is we in the West. We're accustomed to understand it. In the course of this fellowship, I've seen so many connections to philosophers, both ancient and in some cases modern, from the West.
That's good.
I do not understand the divorce that people, even as late as Derrida, have tried to draw between Eastern and Western thinking. Chinese saying that Chinese philosophy is not philosophy doesn't make any sense to me.
Really? But well, actually, some very leading philosophers in the Western world, they argue that there is no Chinese philosophy. Not that, right? you must have heard that kind of argument. They say there is no Chinese philosophy. There is only philosophy. There is no Chinese philosophy. They admit only the so-called Chinese thoughts.
Hugo should say something about this. Hugo is studying Hegel, so he should.
Oh, really? Yes, Hugo, you have any response to my inquiry?
I mean, I don't really know how much Hegel really knew, but like in his lectures on the history of philosophy, I think he only mentions Confucius and Lao Tzu. So I don't think he knew the long history of Chinese philosophy. And if he did, he ignored it. And so, yes. So I think he, I don't know whether he should be thought of as a reliable judger. What he does say, I think, is that it's religion, not philosophy. But religion for him has like a very specific meaning, and actually that's not a terrible thing. He thinks it's like a pictorial representation of the deep philosophical truth. So I guess he thinks that it comes close to philosophy, but he's only looking at the very old, classical ancient text. So I don't know what he would have said about the development afterwards.
Okay. So I feel somewhat relief after listening to your responses. Yeah.
And I think that, like the concept of philosophy in China, especially the term like 哲学, as I know, it means like the 10 students of Confucius, right? So it's all the Chinese philosophy is based on like a Confucianism. And of course, I agree with you in the fact that like Confucianism, it's not a religion at all. It's course, it's like I think it's a core. It's like a main, a core of Chinese, like maybe if we can call it like a philosophy, like some mental system, maybe philosophical system. And of course, I think that a lot of like philosophical tendencies go from like a Confucianism.
Also, a supplementary note to your response is that you must have heard of the so-called Sanjiao, the three teachings.
Yeah, of course, yes. Sanjiao,
yeah, the three teachings. So, yes, we always talk about you know, the relationship, the inner logic, the inner relationship among Confucianism and Taoism and Buddhism, right?
And we call it like a syncretism, right? Like it's like a mix of this.
Synchronization, the synchronization of the three teachings, especially in the late Ming period. A lot of philosophers, many philosophers discuss in, you know, bringing the three teachings together to develop a new type of, you know, arguments. They put forward some new arguments based on the content of the three teachings. And so the late Ming period is a very interesting period in Chinese philosophy, in the history of Chinese philosophy. I think there are many new elements which are worth to be explored.
And you know, Professor, like I visited China many times, and I visited a lot of Chinese cities, and for me, and it's amazing. Then in one place, all this Sanjiao, all this religions mixed up. So, like for example, I think you know this famous temple in Dathong on the Xuankun. I think you know it's like in the mountain.
Yes.
And in this Xuankun, we can see like three different like temples, like three temples of three religions all together. And for me, it's amazing that you are going from one hall to another, and here's like a Confucianism, and here like a Taoism. So it's all mixed. So for me, it's like being a Russian, and we have like a very precise differences between religions, between differences like between different religious directions. And of course it's like it's really amazing. And for me, it's when I'm speaking about Chinese philosophy and Chinese religion, of course I have this like a syncretizing things, some kind of.
But you have to bear in mind, because strictly speaking, religion is under strict control by the Chinese government.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you know, they are anti-theism. You know, the Chinese government, they denied all the religions. You know, so strictly speaking, there is no religion or religious activities officially allowed in China. So what you see in the local temples, you may see there are monks, there are still, but actually there's a kind of, you know, they just, they are paid to, to work in the temple. They are not real, you know, hermits. They are not really, you know, practicing Buddhism. No, I don't think so. They just work there. It's just a job.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much for your time, and it's really interesting, to give a lecture and have some dialogue with all of you. Yeah.
For us, you can imagine how interesting it was.
Thank you very much, and okay. See you.
Hope we can meet again.
Yeah, hope we can meet again. Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.